Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Sasha Calavoda, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find here at the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sovereign Collective podcast. Today, I'm with Dr. Liz Winders. And I was introduced to Dr. Liz through Morley Robbins, someone who actually just interviewed a couple weeks ago. And so he decided that this would be a good fit. So I'm excited to have Dr. Liz on to talk about how she can help you and how she works with people and her story of coming from 15 years as a clinical psychologist and then having a tough time around the birth of her child and going into some PTSD and searching for something that was going to help heal her wounds or whatever. So I'm going to let her say that for with her own words, but she has so many different certifications here. So originally Doctor of Psychology, so Dr. Liz, and then we've got Emotion Body Code and Energy and Medical Intuitive, level 1, level 2, Shamanic, Reiki, angelic healing, Akashic record reading, energy codes, Ho'oponopono, which is something I just love every once in a while, just throw in, and then Tolpocan. And I don't really know what that is. I looked it up very quickly, so I'll go into that. And I don't feel that if that's the main thing that you're doing these days, but all sorts of different things that I'm sure can work together, right? Like all these things are so helpful. So in 2012, her daughter was born and she had a medical trauma, and that set her on her path. Like so many, they have their pain to purpose stories. So thank you, Dr. Liz, for being here today. And please let us know what brought you to where you are today.
Yes, thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share and connect with your audience. So my story begins probably with my career as a psychologist, which I always knew I was going to do something in the helping field. I have a childhood bestie who told me, I don't remember this, but told me when we were in fourth grade that I told her that I was going to be a therapist. And
Oh, wow.
um, it's funny that I don't remember that, but that is the path that I took. And I was a trauma specialist. I worked in VA hospitals and neuropsychiatry clinics. And towards the end of my career, I had a private practice, really focusing on what I considered then holistic psychology and um, and trauma and anxiety and OCD. In private practice, you get all sorts of people that come to you. And so it's nice to have that variety. And as you shared, in 2012, the end of 2012, my daughter was born and I had experienced a medical trauma. And it was, fortunately, she was just fine. And I could go into lots of details of my birth story, but the essence of it was that I was mistreated, over-medicated, and threw me into a traumatic experience. Within, I want to say, a couple hours, I felt there's definitely something wrong. I didn't have the clarity to say my nervous system is dysregulated and this isn't how it should feel a couple hours after the birth of my child, but I just kept feeling like there is something wrong. Something has happened and something is off with me. And I really continued to feel that way for years and years and years. And I think that one of the things that we miss as new mothers when we have gone through a traumatic birth is that as our nervous system is dysregulated, our newborn's nervous system is also dysregulated because they mirror each other. So I was a mess. And then my daughter was a challenging child. She is the light of my life, but boy, was she a challenge. And I knew even then that it was because I couldn't get regulated. She couldn't ground in her body. And so she had all the things, the colic, the inability to be away from me. She couldn't, not that I wanted her to sleep in a different bed, but I did want her to like take a nap off my body sometime. Um, and things like that, like all of the things that in colic, I said colicky and reflux, all of those things that really point to a newborn being unsettled. And so that, of course, increased my stress levels.
Mhm.
So I began looking. And I've always been someone who, like I said, I was the holistic psychologist. Like I had a yoga teacher training that I did so that I could do breath work and movement in my sessions with clients. And I talked about the mind-body connection. And so I wasn't about to be somebody that went and, just got a bunch of pharmaceuticals to try to treat this. That wasn't going to be my path, but I did try therapy and was really underwhelmed and shocked that it did not do the trick. Um, and then I began to look everywhere else with alternative anything. Of course, I worked on my diet, I worked on movement. I saw every shaman I could get my hands on. I tried, access codes and Reiki and all the things. And I think they all were supportive, but nothing really shifted for me until I found emotion code and body code. And that wasn't until like 4 years later.
Mm, wow.
Yeah. So I had seen Dr. Brad Nelson on, I think, a documentary, and thought to myself, well, I haven't tried this yet. And back then there wasn't even a certified practitioner in the area that I live in. And so I did a phone session with somebody 4 hours away and felt a profound shift after one session.
Wow.
It was a really beautiful experience. And I think, as it opened the door for me to change careers, to look at everything drastically different. Emotion code and body code is a very structured modality. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced it, but there are like maps and charts, and you use muscle testing. And I can talk more about that later, but it's very it's very analytical as far as a um energy healing modality goes. And so, you know, I think that the universe source moved through me a technique that would enlighten me to go, hey, I can do that. If this works so well for me, maybe I could use this with my therapy clients. And that's exactly what I did. So I spent some time getting certified, really working on myself and feeling embodied and good for the first time in 4 years. And then I just wanted to share it with everybody that I could.
Mm. Do you feel that was that the return to normal, or was it still a bit of a path from that point still?
I think that most of us are on a long healing journey. And my normal was all of a sudden I could regulate myself. I could feel embodied, as I said. I could really tolerate, anything that was on my plate without shutting down or needing to retreat. And so that was enough for me to redo my life and say, I want to make drastic changes. I want to do something that is so much more fun, so much more empowering, and enables clients to feel capable and that they don't have to be stuck in a therapy office for the rest of their lives. And so that happened. And the more you learn, the more you learn. Right. So the as I moved on and continued taking various courses, there's this awakening that happens that I didn't even know was available. Right. So that is certainly my journey now. And I continue on that. And I love learning and healing and work on myself regularly.
Right. Right. And that the thing is, your story is not rare. right? With the medical births that we have here now, it's almost like they're kind of might be designed to create trauma in both mother and child. And so even like your experience in that, how that's going to impact the development of your child when you can't bond properly, right? When there's so many things that are dysregulating you when they're, because I've done a lot of, like, I created a course called Your Conscious Pregnancy and Parenting Guide years ago when my son was born, because I'm like, this is a big deal, people. It's a
Mhm.
huge deal. And the big part of when their limbic system is being developed in their formative years, those early formative years, right? So those first 4 years are really key for developing our self and world views. And so do you find that a lot of people that you work with had difficult beginnings coming into this world as children?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And
Mm.
there's all aspects, and people that are attracted to working with me are often bringing generational trauma, deep childhood wounds. And then however that leads to some form of breakdown or unhappiness in their present adult life. So, yeah, there are lots of threads that run through for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you ever work with, is that an area that you focus on? Do you educate people around those early childhood years? Like if they're a parent, if you're dealing with a parent or something like that, it's just such a big, it's so close to my heart, that idea, because I have one kid, one son who just turned 15, and it's just, I just see what's happening all around. It's like, oh my goodness. So I just, like, for me, it's like, okay, people, we don't have to repeat the wounds, right? That thing is generational. So
Mm.
yeah, is that
Yeah, I love working with parents, and I often work with new moms. Moms hear my story and resonate with that and want to find a way back to themselves so that they can show up for their children and to really tune in. And so yes, I spent a lot of time. I call it energetic coaching, which I'm not, that just sort of dropped in. I don't know if there's any like structure around that, but the idea is when you go to receive energy healing and you feel really good afterwards and you're experiencing this elevated frequency, but then you go home and maybe your partner's cranky and your kid doesn't listen to you and it's like and then you're like
right?
drop down. So the coaching that I do is how do you maintain that for longer and longer periods of time? And that requires reorganizing the nervous system, healing the nervous system, like really learning to regulate. It requires energy healing and certainly, a handful of other pieces that also include some education on slowing down and paying close attention to, what is actually happening in the interaction with your child.
Mm. And did your daughter shift as you shifted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And even before I could find the answers for me, I had sought out some somatic work for her. And so I was working with her as much as I could and working on myself. And then as the pieces clicked into place for me, our relationship dramatically changed. And I could really spend the entire episode talking about like what an amazing little being she is. But
Mm.
I'm so thankful for the birth experience that awakened me. And without her, I would not be where I am today.
Right, absolutely, right? Like it's purposeful, even though it was painful and not ideal, should we say? But that's why I get so torn by that, because if you didn't have that experience, would you have awakened? Would you have gone down this path? Like I get so torn. People have their story because I'm trying to prevent that in my life and in my child's life, and but at the same time, those moments are so key to us finding who we truly are and what we're here for. So interesting.
100%. And I guess the way that I look at it is having a human experience is never going to be one without some forms of pain and suffering. Like we show up here for contrast, and that means pain. But does it have to be at the hands of medical providers who are uncaring or uninformed? Does it have to be at the hands of, whatever? Maybe not. Maybe there are other ways
Right.
where it could be a more gentle shakeup.
Right, right, absolutely. So now, many years later, you have all these designations. You're not operating as a clinical psychologist anymore, right? Or right? You weren't doing that.
I am not. So in that year, I got certified in emotion code and body code. I practiced with my therapy clients that were really interested and willing to do this. And I had some that were like, no, I don't want to do that. And so I could feel that contrast of what it was like to do this stuff and then what it was like to do the therapy that I had been trained in, which was all evidence-based models. Um, and so the light within me that was really sparked in doing energy healing versus this, what felt like old stagnant energy, was really noticeable. And so I called the licensing board in my state and said, hey, I'm doing these things. Are we good? And they said no. And so I know it
Ah,
just
yeah.
happened to be the year that my license would renew. And so I just decided to not renew my license.
Nice. Yeah, I get that. And then there's all these governing bodies that are like, who are they to say how you do your practice? Like I did a nutrition program 20 plus years ago. I never registered ever because I'm not going to comply to somebody else's ideas of what I should be doing and saying and presenting to my clients. So yeah, I can understand that. So, and now you've got all these. So are you using all of these? Are you using mostly the Topolcan? Am I saying that right? Topolcan?
It's Tolpacan.
Topican. Okay, Topican. So is that what you're doing or are you using a combination? And
I really use a combination. The Tolpacan healing, I did level 1 and level 2 last year. So I spent the whole year taking a deep dive. And my sense is that Tolpacan is just sort of emerging. I'm one of 12 certified practitioners in the world, and
wow. Okay.
Dr. Karen only takes a handful of people a year and then she also requires us to recertify. So there is quite a bit of structure and it's a lot. It's a lot of training to do. Um, so I actually made the commitment that I'm not going to do another training this year because I've done multiple a year since I left psychology. Excuse me. And so I'm just going to take time to integrate these models. But the work that I do is mostly emotion code, body code, angelic healing where it's called, and Tolpacan method. Those are the most powerful of everything that I've done. I love Ho'oponopono, but I don't see it as a technique.
Mm,
I see it as something that I teach people how to do
right.
themselves.
Yeah. Fair. Mhm.
Um, and so I'll tell you a little bit about Tolpacan. The um, the way that it is done is very similar to emotion code and body code in that you connect in with muscle testing. Dr. Karen teaches divine muscle testing, which is a little bit different than what the emotion code body code world uses. And then you simply ask quality questions around somebody's symptoms. So let's say a client comes to me and says, I continue to self-sabotage in this area of my life. And, maybe I'm overwhelmed and anxious because of it. And a few other things, I would be looking for key pieces of information so that I can form a quality question. And then you go to the charts, basically. So there's charts on specific energies that you can identify and then clear through a clearing command. And another thing that's different with the Tolpacan method is downloading and activating positive morphic fields and blueprints. So I found this really interesting because most energy healing is like, let's remove the wobbly energy, let's remove the shadow. Um, and some models are very specific. Let's remove the trapped emotion from your field so the body can heal organically. But with Tolpacan, there is room for downloading potential into somebody's field, which I find super exciting.
Mhm.
And how I have seen this play out over the last year is it's almost, I like to use self-love as an example here because it's something that it's not like an on-off switch, right? If you're on a journey of learning to love yourself, it's like these little baby steps we move in the direction of, but rarely do we're like, wow, I've arrived. I mean, sometimes that happens, but it's this evolving. And when you download a positive morphic field, it makes that evolving more accessible because you can have access to the frequencies of what you're calling in with more ease instead of having to like push or fight for it. It's already in your field. So there's space to just allow it to be there.
So is somebody just energetically tuning in and then allowing it to, is there there must be some kind of a method to that, or, and there must take some, like this type of stuff, I think you would have to be really connected with your intuition and really have some gifts of really maybe sensing or knowing, or is it something that you feel that, like, do you, even with your clients, do they need to be connected with the intuition? Are you helping them do that? How is that all working? And before that, question, Topocan, such a funny name. Does that stand for something? Is that some kind, where
If
did
I recall correctly, it has something to do with Dr. Karen Can's heritage.
oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So she's of Chinese heritage and has something to do with that, but
Okay,
I don't remember exactly
okay, fair.
story behind it.
Okay, okay.
Mm,
So yeah, so what are the like what are the tools? It sounds like, I think some people listen is like, well, how am I gonna do that? How am I gonna download anything? I can't download anything. What, how do I
right.
do that?
The good news is you don't have to. That's why you would work with somebody like me or another certified practitioner that, we do the downloading for you. And it's a command into your field and then double checking if it has landed. And so you use divine muscle testing to ask about where it landed, if there's stuck reasons that it didn't land, and then clearing a pathway for that. And of course, guidance is super important, but I work with people who are really out of touch with their intuitive gifts, and some people who can come in and say, I'm clairaudient and I hear messages all the time, but I need help with this particular area of my life because I can't get clear on it myself. And so I can work with somebody on the full spectrum of developing their own spiritual gifts. And I will receive messages for somebody and often share that with them when and where appropriate.
Oh, okay. And so divine muscle testing, for people that are aware of muscle testing, I'm very familiar with muscle testing. How does that differ from the traditional way of muscle testing?
So, traditional way of muscle testing is tapping into either your own or somebody else's subconscious mind. So, it's very personal, right? So, if I was, before I did this training, say, tuned into somebody, I could ask, did this specific energy get stuck in your field, when you fell off your bike when you were 10 years old, right? And I could receive that message. But divine muscle testing is tapping into source wisdom. So you can ask bigger, broader questions. Um, for example, you can ask things like, how aligned is somebody with truth, love, and light? You can ask bigger questions around, say, the term is divine path score. What is the divine path score for this decision versus that decision, which you really wouldn't have access to within one's own subconscious? Um, so those are some of the subtle differences.
Okay. And are
And
you using your body or like, how do you get your answer?
yeah, so people can muscle test in many, many, many different ways. I use the sway test, and it's so deeply ingrained that I'll just sit here and ask questions, and I sway back and forth to receive the answers.
Okay. And just sitting there, you don't even stand, you just sit and sway.
I don't, yeah. Thankfully, when I first started practicing, I was standing using the sway test, and it was, a bit consuming and also awkward in an office space with somebody. And one day when I was meditating and I was asking questions, my body started moving, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Ah,
So I tuned in,
yeah.
and so
Oh, nice. Well, that's handy.
it
Yeah.
is. To
Uh,
try it.
yeah. I have never, I don't, I'm one of those people who doesn't trust my own. I can test somebody else but to do it myself, I always get my husband to do it for me. Like, can
Hmm.
you test me and ask? I haven't gotten to the place of trusting my own and trusting that I'm not bought into the final answer,
Yes.
right?
That
So
neutrality is so super important.
yeah,
Mhm.
yes, it is. Because I really just want the truth, but sometimes like, do I really want the truth? Or so yeah, I haven't gotten to that trust in my own, but it's something I should definitely develop because what an amazing tool.
Yes, I love to teach all of my clients to muscle test. I don't teach them divine muscle testing, but I teach them how to muscle test themselves because it is so powerful to have access. I mean, and there's limits, right? They say that muscle testing is about 98% accurate, that there is a little inconsistency in it. And of course, there are things like if you're dehydrated or if you need an adjustment, things like that,
Mhm.
or if you're emotionally attached to the outcome, that can throw off
Right.
an answer.
Right, for sure, for sure. Okay. So, somebody gets in touch with you, and what could they expect to experience?
Yeah, so if somebody would like to work with me, the easiest way would be to sign up to one of my membership offers. And so there are a number of those on my website. If they, so I have 3 membership offers that are very specifically outlined that are really easy to like step in and try out working with me. If somebody wanted to work with me one-to-one, they could schedule a free 15-minute consultation and we would just talk about, what it is they're looking for and if I'm a good fit for them. So it
Mhm.
gives people a chance to meet me and feel into the energy of what I have to offer. And then my initial session with somebody is 75 minutes. And I like to do about 20 minutes of that of really getting to know somebody's story. And this doesn't mean like rehearsing trauma, but getting a sense of highlights of their life so that I can ask those quality questions. And then the rest of the session would be spent doing the energy healing work.
And how do you find, like, what I find is that though people seem to say that they want to heal, they want to move forward, I find that they're very attached to their story. Like, how do you find that, and how do you cut those cords? Because I find people, whether it be physical ailments, traumatic instances in their life, it's like there's so much energy put into that, and it's so ingrained as part of their identity that they don't really want to let it go because it's serving them in some way. So, do you find that with your clients, and do you find that that gets in the way of their success?
Yes, 100%. I would say, fortunately, people often find me at the end of their healing journey, and that's not always true, but they've tried a number of other places and people. Um, and so they're ready to take more personal responsibility at that point. Now, if I meet somebody that's really stuck in their story and all they want to do is rehearse it,
Mhm.
then I often have a conversation, kind and respectful conversation that outlines some facts around, what happens in our biology and in our brain when we just rehearse our story, right? So you're just recreating it and you're hardwiring it into your nervous system over and over again.
Right. It's a real
Um,
addiction, isn't it? Right?
I'm sorry?
It's like an addiction.
It can 100% be an addictive reaction. And so if I have somebody who says, okay, I get that, and I want to take responsibility, but I don't know how, then I'm looking at healing their addictions to whatever they're getting out of the pain and suffering, maybe their fears around taking full responsibility for their lives, and then um, activating those energies within them to take responsibility. And then I'd likely be doing some coaching on like really slowing down the process of what the client might do individually in their lives to shift things subtly. So if somebody is, say, really stuck in a victim story, some version of a victim story, and they often tell their victim story when they get together with friends or they complain about a situation with their partner, then I might say, no more. let's just take a week and you can't tell your victim story. If you have anything to say around, and let's say, somebody cuts you off in traffic and you're really pissed off about it and you want to go home, can you resist? Can you regulate first? Can you frame it in a way where you take full responsibility? And I give people phrases like, um, one of my favorite is, how is this situation benefiting me that I can't see right now? How is this pain point helping me out that I can't see right now? And that begins to shift the energy so that they can receive self-responsibility.
Right. And I guess it opens them up to possibly a different viewpoint. Like it sounds very opening to me, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you stop and get curious instead of just judge it right away.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it just feels so good to just complain, right? There's so much to complain about these days. Seriously. But I know I was really just with the last few years, I was just like, "Ugh," just about a year and a half ago, I just turned everything off. And I just meditated and listened to good stuff all day. And Bruce Lipton was like in my ear all day long. Not Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza. And
Yeah.
just about really just focusing, okay, what do I want? I don't want the stuff I've been focusing on for 3 years. So I better, shift that path. So yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And I love to teach people how to manifest the life that they do desire. And I think that's such like a key word. People are like, oh, I can do that, right? And that feels more accessible than it would have, 10 years ago, even though there's lots of missing pieces and sort of socially accepted term manifestation. So I like to teach people those missing pieces to really empower them. And how do I live the life of my dreams?
right. And so do you find that people can embrace that and achieve that? Is that something that, because there is so much talk about manifestation, right? And there's all the law of attraction. And I think that's kind of an incomplete story, but there's so much around that. And everybody claims to know, but it's I don't know. What do you have stories around that?
Oh, so many stories. So I have taught manifestation, I'll say in like my way, which includes things like clearing out your energetic blocks to being able to manifest and downloading the energies that you need to be able to call in, and taking a serious look at your self-responsibility. Because if you're not taking 100% self-responsibility for your life, then you don't get things. And another angle I take with this is looking at something called abundance challenges. And that phrase comes from Dr. Karen, but I I love the idea that it's manifesting is not just about money, right? But there's challenges that show up where the universe, God, spirit says, okay, how are you going to handle this? You said you wanted this wild experience.
Mm,
And then when I give you this, you react in this way. So I can't give you this wild experience because you're not resonating at that level yet.
right.
Um, so I'll share a personal example in the way that I worked with this, with myself in this model. When I guess it was 20, I love to travel. I think it was 21 or yes. Yes, it was 22. I love to travel. And then when the pandemic happened, obviously that was ripped away. I was like a week away from 10 days in Malta before the United States like shut down. It was really crushing. I mean, it's crushing for lots of reasons, but for me personally, I was like so ready for travel. And I, waited and waited and said, I've had enough. I want to go to Costa Rica. I want to have my daughter experience the beautiful everything in Costa Rica, and decided I was going to spend 5 weeks there. I Yep, I was going to make an epic trip. We were going to dive in culturally and see a couple areas of the country. Um, I found a beautiful house in Manuel Antonio and decided to rent it for a month. I have a friend, a business bestie. We decided to host a retreat there, and we were going to do all these really big, big things. The house alone cost $24,000
Wow.
for the 4 weeks, right? So my husband was like, we already have a mortgage. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, some tax things happened. I had sold a property in Florida and got hit with this tax bill and really recognized all this contraction, right? So I'm telling Source, I want to live this big, epic life. I want to go on this trip and have these experiences, and it's going to be amazing, right? And then these pieces come in, and I'm like, oh, I've got to pay this $10,000 tax bill, and I've got to do this. And so I had to practice what I preach.
Yeah. Right.
Big time,
Yep.
big time. So I moved forward with the whole adventure, shifted my energy into more divine feminine, and practiced receiving. I paid my tax bill with love, sent it off, and thanked it for being there as a life lesson. And the pieces fell into place. And the out-of-pocket expenses at the end of that trip were about $5,000 for me.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's an international vacation for a family.
Totally.
But I spent 5 weeks there.
5 weeks. Yeah. Amazing. Nice. And that's the thing. Like, it's so easy to apply the principles when all is well, when everything is smooth and easy. And then that's when it hits. It's like whether it be a health challenge or a life challenge, this is when the rubber meets the road. Do you really believe what you've been touting, right?
Yeah.
So it's nice to recognize that and say, okay, well, now I get to put this into practice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And see it as a gift. Really see it as a gift so that as you move through it, you're actually elevating yourself to be able to hold more, to experience more. And that's really the essence of what an abundance challenge is. Because most of us can't go from our ideas of lack and victim and I don't have and it doesn't happen for me stories into an abundant, love-filled epic life. It just doesn't, it's not a light switch. We have to move through these little steps where we're slowly able to hold more, and hold more.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's amazing. It's just looking at that as an opportunity, these challenges as an opportunity. It's like, okay, how much? Because my husband always says, like, he coaches with people, and he's like, the universe will never give you anything that you can't handle, right? So if it's here, well, what am I going to do with it? I get to choose. He likes to say, so what? No, it's not, what does he say? So what? Now what? So it's like, okay, so it's here. Now what? Now
Hmm.
what are we going to do, right? And we can all be faced with the same thing and have very different outcomes depending on how we decide to go about it. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So tell us more about the emotion codes and body codes because I've heard of it, but I really don't know
Okay.
anything about that.
Yeah, so emotion code and body code are two modalities designed by Dr. Brad Nelson, and they are very structured. Again, these were like my intro to the world of energy healing, personally practicing it. Um, Emotion code is very simply you use muscle testing to tap into, is there a trapped emotion? And if you get a yes, then you clear it. Now, Dr. Brad would recommend that you clear with a magnet running down the governing meridian. That's the traditional way of doing it. But it's really just enhancing your intention. And so I don't do that anymore. I just use a command to clear the trapped emotion. And then body code is a whole system of about 1,000 different types of energies to also clear in the same way. So you have everything from um, there's 6 different maps. So imbalances, traumas, pathogens, systems, circuits and systems, darker energies, and then there's one more that I can't think of. Maybe emotional stuff or mental emotional stuff. And so under each of those 6 maps, it's literally an app. You would, muscle test, is it on the right side? Yes. And I would tap on okay, is it here? Then you get down into a root cause, and then there's a chart where you find even more specific information. So there's really interesting things like despair anchors, which is a negative thought that loops in the mind and then gets anchored into the subconscious. And what does the subconscious do when it believes something? It wants to verify it, right? So if you have
Ah,
the belief of I'm a victim, right, then you're looking in your environment to constantly be verifying that. Right.
and I bet you find proof all over the place, right? People find that proof everywhere.
You find it, you find
Right.
exactly what you're looking for.
Right.
Yes. And that's all subconscious. So another example might be a will to energy. And or there's no will to and will tos. And so there's a whole chart of different types, but let's say you have a no will to receive support and that's stuck in you. Maybe you had programming as a young person around you have to do it yourself, or you have to work hard, or you have to earn your place. Then that no will to energy could be stuck in there. And then, you're an adult raising children and your partner says, "Hey, I'll do the dishes." And you're like, "No, I'll do them myself." And then afterwards, you're angry and frustrated. And it's all because of these lower frequency energies that get stuck within us that are not really floating around in our conscious mind, right? It's not like you tell your partner, "No, I have no will to receive your support right now."
Right. Right.
So, those are some examples. Sometimes there's an imbalance in an organ, or I'll find aspects of the physical body that are imbalanced based on maybe a trapped emotion or a belief system that's stuck in the organ itself. And then you can clear and balance that. Actually was working with somebody recently who she was having heart palpitations and had every medical test done, couldn't find anything. And so I was muscle testing and asking some questions. And in the valve, which I can't remember what the medical term is, but the valve that goes from the esophagus into the stomach, there was a trapped energy there. And so I cleared that. I think it was a trapped emotion. I cleared that, and the heart palpitations went away.
Right.
So
You
things
see,
like that.
people get physical benefits as well as emotional benefits as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
the pain relief is often pretty quick. The emotional release is a more gradual, because we tend to behave in our same ways and get addicted and habits around our emotional experience. So that takes a bit more work. But if these techniques are going to work for pain, you'll know in 1 to 3 sessions. And sometimes immediately people will feel, "Oh, I don't have that pain in my knee after I get up from this session anymore." So that's always fun.
right. Because it's nice to get that really fast evidence right there so people can, I guess it could be a bit of a hook for them to say, okay, well, did this. What else could it do? Right. So do you work with people in person? Or are you working with them online? Or are you doing both?
I do both. I go to an office 1 day a week, and I've just really kept that after the pandemic because it's fun for me. And so I enjoy it. That space tends to fill up with local clients who are interested in coming to offices and are tired of Zoom meetings.
Mhm.
Um, but the rest of what I do is all virtual, and I see people all over the country, and even have clients in Japan and Australia at one point.
And so when you were doing your clinical psychology, what did you feel that it wasn't really getting to the root? Like what were your results back then compared to what you're seeing now?
So I think there was sort of this digested belief that when I was a clinical psychologist, so that not everybody gets better, that sometimes when you're traumatized, it's a lifelong deal. And so I had accepted that not everybody is going to be well, that working with me is not going to result in wellness in the way that I now know is possible for people. Uh, Despite that, I'm 100% a lifelong learner. I was always taking classes. Like when I was a psychologist, I did classes on tapping and, like I said, yoga, and I was always looking for more. And I remember working in a VA hospital. I did my residency there. I worked on a military sexual trauma unit. So really very wounded people. And the models, the evidence-based models felt like torture for me. I was like, these people are so wounded, so broken. And I'm like, essentially I was trained. I was being forced to do these therapy models that felt awful to perform. Now, some of them, some of those clients really got better from them, but I would say not anywhere close to 50% in my experience.
And
And
that is that
so,
because you just keep bringing it up and re-traumatizing, reliving, like it's just talking about it? Is that basically what that was?
yeah, so some of the models, the exposure therapy is like the one known model of therapy that works for trauma. You expose the person to what they experienced, and then the nervous system learns that it's not happening right now. But for some people, what they experienced is so horrific that they couldn't actually tolerate the exposure work.
So
And
how do
so,
you expose somebody who's had sexual like how is that even done to re-expose? What is that?
so one model was writing it out and then reading it over and over again, writing, reliving the experience basically. Sometimes there's a retelling of it over and over again before it becomes, boring or old that you're telling the story. And yeah, so it was hard. So once I got out in the world outside of training and I was licensed doing my own thing, I was always looking for shortcuts. Like there's got to be a better way. There's just got to be. And there is. I mean, things like tapping and EMDR are much more efficient models for processing trauma. And I always tell people now, I always tell people, you have to tell your story once. There needs to be another human that has witnessed
Yeah,
your pain.
fair.
Tell your story once, max 3 times.
Okay.
That's
Wow.
all that ever needs to be told.
So I have a question about EMDR because I know somebody who had a very traumatic head-on collision, and that is a big part of his healing. But I didn't know. I knew EMDR has to do with the eye movements, correct?
Yep.
But I didn't realize that he was retelling his story over and over and over and over again. Like to me, it's like when I think of what you focus on expands, I don't understand. Like I can see, okay, fine, you've said enough. Maybe you're not so triggered by it, but to me, it just seems like you're just holding on rather than releasing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I never got certified in EMDR because it felt back when they were doing training way back in the day when I was considering that, it felt like more of that. I think it's evolved some where you might be repeating a statement. Um, I do know people who've had wonderful success with EMDR, and
Yeah.
I know people who have been re-traumatized from it. So it's not a 100% works for everybody kind of deal.
Yeah.
But it's not an awful model either. There's something to the cross-lateral stimulation that happens in the brain when you're moving the eyes,
Okay.
or sometimes there's different things that you do with your hands
Right.
to stimulate the trauma from being released from the amygdala is the idea behind it. And so
Oh,
there's
okay.
something to that. I imagine we just have a lot more to learn about it.
Oh, okay. 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 Yeah. Yeah. From a surface view, I don't know. I was like, what? But yeah, I'm sure there's other stuff involved. So if you're seeing someone in person, are they sitting down? Are they lying down? Like are you touching them? I guess not. If you're or do you maybe if they're in person as opposed because if they're online, you're not.
I'm not, yeah. So if I'm seeing somebody in person, they are sitting in a chair and we're in dialogue through the whole process. Sometimes I will invite people inward to go into stillness, which enhances healing with the Tolpacan method. And that's just like a self-healing tool that I teach people when we use that model. But there is a lot of engagement, which is different than say like Reiki, where you go in and you lay on a massage table and somebody's working over your body and maybe there is some touch. And that can feel really lovely and relaxing, but it's just not my modality. It's not the way that I'm really meant to practice.
Right, right. So when you're say retraining somebody's nervous system or let me say configure, what am I trying to say? Calming their whatever. When you're like resetting, say, their nervous system, what are the biggest tools around that to actually to get them to be able to handle life? What are the main tools there?
So one would be the energy work piece. And let's just say the person is doing that. They're seeing their energy healer and they're working with their frequency because everything is frequency. So that is an important piece of the puzzle, no matter how you're getting it. The other pieces are really going to be around breath work. I teach a technique called vocal toning, which activates activates the parasympathetic nervous system, but through stimulating the vagus nerve. There are a number of tools that I teach that also just work with the vagus nerve. So things that work with peripheral vision of the eye. So you're looking in various ways, and this kind of tells the nervous system, oh, there's no saber-toothed tiger behind me. I'm safe.
Okay.
So
So
I
how
can,
does the vagus nerve play into this? Because it has so much, it affects, I don't know what it doesn't affect. It affects so much. Like how, so, because there's things you can physically do for the vagus nerve, and then there's obviously other things. Like, so how does that play into it? Can you tie in the vagus nerve to all this?
I'll do my best because there's probably pieces I don't know, but the way that I think about the vagus nerve is the vagus nerve is the pathway in which the body speaks to the brain. So it's the information that goes up versus the other way around. And so if the body feels calm and relaxed, the brain will stop its storytelling, right? The mind can stop going, oh no, there's something to be afraid of. Don't go in that corner. Don't do this. Don't do that. Everything is scary. And so that is so much more powerful than if I were to say to you, hey, everything is fine. You're okay. Just settle down.
Oh,
And then
a lot
you
of
go,
people
all
don't
right,
like
I'm
to
gonna,
do
right,
that.
right. Just relax. Can you
Yeah.
just relax? Right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that. Um, so even if you're working with, say, positive affirmation and you're saying 100 times a day, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, the message does not get to the lower levels of consciousness. It just doesn't, right? I mean, there's a little window when you wake up and when you go to sleep where you have access to those, I think, delta waves. I could be wrong about that, but the lower waves of consciousness, there's a little window there, and that's really when your affirmations are most powerful. So you can convince your conscious mind that you are safe, but your body can still be in the state of panic and trauma. So your vagus nerve teaches the whole system when you are safe and when you are not. It's the activator of the fight or flight or the parasympathetic relax and digest system.
Mhm. Okay. Super cool. And so who's your ideal client? Who do you love working with?
Yeah. I work equally with men and women, which a lot of energy healers are like, I work with women or moms only. I find that men tend to gravitate to this line of work because there's some structure to it and they like we're going to do this and there's an outcome. We're working towards a goal. And that's a stereotype, but it still resonates as true.
Mhm.
So I work both with men and women who are struggling to live the life of their dreams. And this can be relationally, it can be with a medical condition, it can be with a mental emotional condition. So it's across the board. The only clients I don't work with are people who are actively in an addiction process. And so if they're actively using, my work is a waste of their time and money. And so I would refer them to another system until they're able to get sober.
Fair, fair. And when you're dealing with this deep trauma, like what you were dealing with at hospital must have been horrific. Like, what do you do so that you don't bring it on?
Oh, yeah. I honestly used to be like, I'm fine. I'm trained how to do this. And then when I had PTSD, I was like, oh my gosh, it opened all of my trauma.
Oh, wow.
Yes, all of the secondary trauma. Um, And so I work through that. I work a lot on balancing my own energy. I mean, honestly, every morning I tune in to my energy field and just sense what's going on for me. I work on regulating my nervous system. daily, I would say. I mean, unless I happen to be in Costa Rica and it's already regulated.
The work's been done. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so self-care for an energy healing practitioner is so, so important. I mean, it's important for everybody, but there is an additional layer that I have to take self-responsibility for, or I won't be able to show up for my clients in the way that I truly want to.
Mhm. Can you somehow apply these techniques to yourself?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yes. I regularly work on myself. And when it feels like something that's too sensitive or attached to, I have people who are certified in the things that I am that I reach out to and say, "Hey, I need a session."
Hmm. Yeah. It's nice to have that too. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is.
everybody needs someone to go to every once in a while just to, yeah, there. And so you talk about angelic healing. So for the people that might think, well, that's not analytical, that's not structured. As soon as you're
Yes.
saying angelic, what's that? What can you give us a little bit of an explanation around that?
Yeah. So, and it is not structured or or analytical at all. That is very true. Um, So I found angelic healing probably 2 years after I left my psychology practice. And I think it was personally part of my own intuitive awakening. So as I learned to channel energies and tune into different archangels and be able really to see the guides that somebody has in their field, I needed to do this training because it awoke that part of myself. And so the way that shows up now is if I'm working with somebody and I intuit that there is an angel or archangel that is present, then I just tell the client, "Hey, this is available to you. Are you open? What do you think?" And I've really never had anybody say, "No, I don't want that."
Right,
Um, and so sometimes it's a message that's coming through for the client. Sometimes it is a specific healing. And I never know what that's going to look like. And I just allow it to flow through me.
right,
So I'll describe for the client what is happening, what the angelic energy is providing and doing. And it's all, I just hear it and sometimes see it as well.
oh, you do. So when you're walking around, walking down the street, or are you seeing stuff? Are you hearing stuff? Or is that something you have to be tuning into? Or is that something that just comes naturally for you?
It's something that I have to be tuned into. And I know that there are some people who maybe have awakened, clairvoyance or clairaudience, and it kind of bombards them constantly.
Mhm.
And that's not the case for me. And I'm very thankful for that. And I've also worked very hard for that to be true. I am a firm believer in sovereignty, that it is none of my business what's happening to the person who is across the street from me, nor do I want to know that, unless we're in therapeutic
Right,
relationship where we're in this space where there's consent
yeah,
and there is desire for healing.
right.
Um, and so I have really firm energetic boundaries around that stuff.
Right.
Um, I will say I went over to a friend's house a couple months ago and their cat had been like stuck up a tree and the cat spoke to me. It was like, I need some help. It like reached out to
Oh,
me
I love that.
energetically. And so I just told my friends, "Hey, can I work on your kitty? 'Cause he's calling to me." But that's the first time that's ever happened. And so I
That was
think
fun.
there's, an animal's a slightly different
Yeah,
piece, and the animal had actually asked for help with
right,
that.
right. Oh, that'd be so cool to know what our animals were thinking and feeling. That'd be pretty cool. So yeah, because I met a guy a while ago who he's clairaudient, and but he didn't know how to manage. I think he can manage it now, but before it was like he said he was like in a small like room, an office space, but it was like the sound of a stadium. You're right, and it was like I feel like that can drive somebody crazy
Oh yeah,
if
for
you
sure.
don't know how to. What do you do with that? Like, oh, that would be exhausting and crazy making all at the same time.
Yeah, I actually do work with this. I have a whole program that I'm getting ready to launch that will really, for people who want to awaken certain gifts, we can do that. And for people who need to turn down certain gifts and work on boundaries around that,
Yeah.
you can do that too. I mean, with this work, you can go in and because we're sovereign beings and create the experience that you desire.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. And how often does somebody have an angel hanging around?
Everybody has guides all the time.
Really?
So all the time, everybody has a team of guides. And sometimes in crisis moments or things like that, there are additional guides, healers, archangels that show up for people to support them. But as far as asking me to intervene and assist in a healing, I would say that happens in my work maybe once every week or 2 weeks for somebody
Okay.
where that will show up.
So if I've got guides here, and I'm
Mhm.
always talking, I never seem to get any kind of clear whatever. Every once in a while, I kind of hear something. I'm like, oh, what was that? But it's pretty rare. So how does someone tune into that? How does someone work with their guides?
So I would recommend, if you were my client, I would recommend that you started a practice of tuning in. I would teach you a stillness practice. We would do some energy work to make sure that you're aligned with divine energy so there's not interference. And actually, sometimes you need to create a communication clarity. And so they may be speaking, but you can't interpret it. And
Mm,
so you can do some specific language and commands so that you can hear and activate. Um, so for people who aren't naturally clairvoyant or clairaudient or whatever, and it, like your friend where it kind of takes over.
mm,
And if you're seeking that life experience, think of it like cultivating it. And so it's this relationship that you're nurturing, that you're tuning into, that you're deciding to trust on. And you need some energy work to support you being able to receive that. And then it just blossoms.
mm. Do you think
For
that's
people,
available to everyone?
I I want to say yes to that if they do the work and take responsibility for the experience. Because sometimes it's like, oh, I want that. But on a deeper layer, they're really afraid of that because what if they get a message that they don't want to act on?
Right. Right. And that taking self-responsibility, that's such a big piece. And I find not everybody wants that. A lot of people don't want that.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is the pathway to all freedom.
Right. Of course. Of course. Because if you're not, then it puts you on the victim side, right? It happens to me. What can I do? I can't do anything, or just tell me what to do. So many people just want to be told, they want to be led. They'll
Yeah.
follow the rules, no matter how ridiculous they are. So interesting. So, okay, so say somebody's depressed and trapped and they can't get over their story. Can you give a couple tips of what somebody could do right now before reaching out to anybody and give them a couple tips? It's like, okay, this is what you can do to start shipping. If you truly want this, like, what are a couple tips you could give somebody?
Before they reached out to an energy healer, I would say really monitoring their thoughts. And I would do, Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza stuff. What is happening on a conscious level that you can begin to shift, and how can you get that into deeper levels of consciousness? So, what story are you willing to let go of? And what story are you willing to entertain? Right. So if this old story is, I'm depressed and bad things always happen to me, are you willing to entertain that I can live a life of peace and joy? And really answer the question honestly. Are you willing to entertain that story? And if
Right.
the answer is yes,
Yeah.
then start telling it to yourself, journal it, repeat it right before you go to bed. First thing in the morning, repeat that story over and over and over again and consciously make the decision to look in your life where good things are happening. And that breaks the addiction to that seeking the negative in the environment. or the, however it shows up, the shutdown, the rejection, whatever it may be.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and then, regulating your nervous system and working with your nervous system is important, whether you're dealing with trauma and anxiety or whether you're dealing with depression and kind of a sinking, freezing sense. And so I would say moving the body with somatic work, and it can just be like a YouTube video at home, um, activating the voice, and doing any other form of vagus nerve work that you feel called to do. Again, like there's endless things on YouTube.
And the somatic work, like when you're talking somatic, what kind of things are examples of that?
So somatic work is going to be embodied, right? So how can you move emotion through the body? And so you can look at um, ecstatic dance. There are all kinds of somatic programs out there. Even just doing a YouTube search for somatic processing, you will probably find ways of how do I tap into this piece. A more advanced step would be, get out your yoga mat or go stand in your backyard and sense into your body. How does my body want to move today? I
Mm.
just want to roll my shoulders. Do I want to like land in a full body squat and feel that stretch through my hips? What does the body want to do? Letting the body lead and seeing where that takes you.
Nice. And I bet you a lot of people would not be tuned in. They wouldn't know. They'd be like, oh, I don't know. I just, people are so disconnected from that. They aren't embodied, I find.
Yes. And that's one of the first things I do with people is align that energetic flow that runs through our bodies, because most of us are really backed up through the physical body. Like source energy is coming through and it might get to about here, sometimes about mouth or throat, but it tends to back up through the body. And when we can activate flow, the energy flow through the body, then we can tune in with a little bit more ease. But man, does it take some hard wiring to be embodied. We're really disconnected. It
Absolutely.
would be so easy to spend 30 seconds in that scenario that I described on your yoga mat and go, oh, let me go check social media. This is boring.
Right. There's a few distractions out there these days. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my goodness. Especially when people aren't used to stillness.
Yes.
Unless you're actively practicing it, people aren't used to stillness. They're not like, I even find myself, it's like, oh, I posted a podcast, like, how many downloads did I get? How many? It's like, who cares? It'll be there tomorrow. Like, don't do that. And I watch myself. Doesn't mean I always stop myself, but I
Mhm.
certainly watch myself and I'm aware of that it's just it's so well it's driving that dopamine. It's like, oh, I got another one. Oh yeah, I got another one. Oh yeah, or I didn't get one. Right. So yeah, that's a tough one. And that's why the thing I struggle with the most is raising a child in this
Mhm.
environment now with
Mhm.
phones, computers, like it's too much. And I feel like it's such a tragedy for children because they don't get to be bored and discover those gifts inside. Like we used to just hang out literally in a sandbox or go sit on a rock and just talk about whatever and just go explore and and just nobody gets bored now because they can pick up the phone and check out what's going on and it's just
It's a grand social experiment that's very scary.
it's very scary. And do you see kids or teens and are you seeing the effects of that?
I'm seeing the effects of it absolutely. I don't tend to work one-on-one with kids, but what I will do is if a parent either reaches out or I'm working with the parent and they say, hey, my kid's having a certain problem, I'll work through the parent to the kid. Now I have worked with some teenagers that are really open to this work, but it takes a special open teen because most of the time it's like, well, I don't really want to talk about my stuff and this is weird. And, occasionally I get a teenager like, this is the coolest stuff ever. Tell me everything and teach me how to do it. And that's really fun. Um, but if I'm working with a younger person, it's usually through the parent.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's this grand experiment. It's going to be when this, this generation, let's say, I don't know, 10, it was 5, who knows what they're wired already. Like, who are they going to be as adults and what are they going to know about themselves? People don't know they don't know who they are.
Yeah.
It's all about this outer, whatever it looks like and how they're connecting online. And it's just, oh, it just makes me so sad. And I get so torn. And that's our biggest struggle, I would say, at home with our son is just because it's just as a teenager, you don't know that your parents actually have a little bit of wisdom, you know?
This is the stage where you know nothing.
Right.
Nothing. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. He's pretty good though with certain things. Like he's very health conscious and he likes that, but it's just that pull because all his friends are
Sure.
doing it, right? So, but my son's not in school. So
Mm.
that is he's homeschooled. He always has been at home. So he doesn't have that constant entourage of that. So that's
Yeah.
one thing that I'm thankful for because I don't want to fight that.
Yeah, it is hard. My daughter's only 11, so we're no social media. You know, she has a tablet and chats with friends and things like that. But I definitely hear the such and such has YouTube and such is allowed to have this, and different families do different things. And so we'll hold out as long as we possibly can.
Yeah, it is because that's the thing. You can't go like my son, he just turned 15. He doesn't have a phone yet. He bought himself one a year ago. He hasn't been able to use it. And he's like, so when do we get it? When do we get it? Birthday's gone. It's like, when do we get it? It's like, it's just like just a point of no return. It's like you can't give it back. And that's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so hard as a parent. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I had another question. Oh, and chakras. You also work with chakras, right? Is that part of the angelic healing? Is that just part of like what is that? Where
It
does that
shows up wherever it's needed. And so I may use the Tolpacan model. I may use it could show up in body code. Oh, there's a trapped emotion in your chakra, in your throat chakra. Um, and sometimes I'm just guided to do a full chakra rebalance and clearing, and that I just allow myself to be guided for what need is needed for the client. Yeah. Does that did I
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, because it's just like you're using so many tools and it's good.
know?
Good.
I'm all
So
over
it's
the
that some
I
people,
love this stuff.
yeah, well, I know, and that's the thing. It's like, oh, there's something new, there's something new, there's something new. It's like me and like more in the well, I'm really fascinated with all things that support overall health and wellness, which it's all levels of stuff, but it's often in the nutrition and the physical symptom world, right? But it's like I think I've got it. And then I was like, wow, look at this. And it's just whole new world just opens up to me. And then the next
Mhm.
one and the next one, next one. It's just fun. I love learning about it. Absolutely.
It's fun.
Okay, so if somebody wants to work with you, how do they get in contact with you? What's your website?
It's Essential Healing with Dr. Liz. It's drliz.com.
So it's Essential Healing with Dr. Liz, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice long website. Essential Healing with Dr. Liz. And there's ways to schedule with me and take a look at my membership offers and things like that. Yeah.
And so you do retreats as well sometimes. So you did that one in Costa Rica that actually went ahead and
Mm-hmm.
people come down.
Yep, it was super fun. It was so
Oh,
fulfilling. I haven't hosted a retreat since last spring, but my business bestie and I are just starting to feel a little bit like, oh, there might be some energy for this. So we would do local in-person day retreats at a yoga studio, and then we have hosted one international retreat and one in another state. And so that, when it comes, I'll do it again for sure. I just don't know exactly when it is, but it'll be in my newsletter and on my website for sure.
awesome. Awesome. So if you were to leave a message for listeners and say, just what are some words of wisdom to leave with the general public? Because I work also just a few days a week in a little like a herbal shop as well. So I see people, I teach, I work with this one company and I do this, and there's a few different ways that I engage with people. And so I'm always seeing people coming in and they've got problems. And what the really disturbing thing is I'm seeing the young kids come in with a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of that stuff too. But in general, like just the people, we're always trying to fix ourselves. You know,
Yes.
it's like I don't think we're here to just focus on the fixing. So what I don't know, what kind of wisdom can you leave people with before we go today?
Yeah, so I guess I think about energy healing is often the missing piece of a healing journey. And I think so much of us are on healing journeys right now, whereas 200 years ago, this would not, I mean, you might have had a chronic illness and been sick and attended to, but this kind of the way that we talk about healing now was not even on the radar. But as we move into a great shift, that we're being asked to take responsibility for all of our baggage and to heal it. And so energy healing is often the missing piece of that puzzle. So if you have your diet in check and you are taking the appropriate supplements and you move your body and you listen and tune into your inner wisdom and you're still struggling, then perhaps you're missing that piece. And so seek out an energy healer that you feel really aligned with. And it feels like this person is working towards my goals.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really key thing because so many times people come from their doctors, for example, and they are absolutely undermining the goals of the patient, right? They're not their ally in this. So they're
Yeah.
on their own agenda. That's a pretty important piece there, that they're there to support you and not the other
Right.
way.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, Dr. Liz, I think that's great. I think I had one story, I have a question, I forgot what it was. I didn't write it down because I thought I knew it, but
Okay.
yes, no, I think that that's great. I think the more that people are open to different possibilities, the more, that's the thing. We need some collective healing right now. There's been some major
Mm.
trauma surfacing lately. And I just feel like we're in a world where people really they don't they don't know who they are, and so they're led. They're easy led.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not, there's no strength of what they stand for.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us, we know a little bit more, not, I mean, we know more, but know more of what we would stand for and where our line is like, don't you, I'm not crossing that.
Yeah. And that takes a willingness to sit in your own truth
Mhm.
and what feels like truth, right? Because somebody can say, hey, this is truth. Would you like to swallow that?
Right.
And some people will blindly go, yes, I do want to swallow that because I don't want to spend the time within and feel, does this resonate as truth to me? Yeah. And so part of all of our healing journey is that sacred space within.
Mhm. And that
I,
willingness term is, to me, is like my one of my favorite terms. Like just with my husband and I, when he'll check in, it's like the thing that I love about him more than anything is the willingness, right? And that willingness, because I see so many other people in their relationships and there's no willingness. Like, well, there's a brick wall, and if there's no willingness, it doesn't mean you have to be totally in agreement on everything, but that willingness is such a big key because then you stop,
yep.
right?
Mhm.
There's always something else to explore and learn and grow from. And yeah, so.
So true.
Hey, well, thank you. I think that was great. Okay, you hold on. But everyone, if you know somebody who's struggling, if you know somebody who's stuck in their patterns, if you know anybody or yourself, even if you feel like that there's something more out there for you and you just don't know how to access it, then maybe Dr. Liz can help you find that. So be sure to contact her. All the information is going to be in the show notes. And please share this podcast. Please give me a rating if you enjoy this podcast too. I don't ask that enough. I'm trying to grow it. As I say at the end of my podcast these days, I'm really trying to grow this because I want to be part of, you know, the information source for sharing all the amazing gifts that people are bringing to this world, because there's more than one way to heal. And here's another way for you that I've introduced through Dr. Liz. So thank you, Dr. Liz. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you
And
so much.
everybody, thanks for tuning in, and be well.